Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our land care check-in session this morning. If you haven't seen my face before, my name's Eve, and I'm the Member Services Manager here at Waln. And I'd also like to welcome Vanessa, who's joining us today from the Waln team. But before we get started, I would like to acknowledge I live and work on beautiful Whadjuk Noongar Budja, and I consider myself fortunate to help restore this country. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and I extend a deep respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders on the call today. I acknowledge their ongoing connection to land, sea, and sky as the world's oldest continuous living culture. And please feel free to acknowledge what country you are calling in from in the chat function. I'd love to see the diversity of land we're calling in from today. So thank you all for joining us online this morning. I'd like to welcome our speakers for today, Holly Butterworth from DPIRD and Dr Deborah Holtham from DWER. Together, they'll run us through the opportunities available in the Fertiliser Management Program delivered through Healthy Estuaries WA and Soils New Horizons. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to Casey, past member of the Waln team, and all other staff attending this morning from DPIRD. Now I'm going to hand over to Holly. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Eve. So I'm Holly. As Eve mentioned, we're going to be talking about the Fertiliser Management Program run by the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation and the Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development as part of the Healthy Estuaries WA and Soils New Horizons programs. So these programs have been developed for glaciers in the high rainfall zone, including 7 priority estuary catchments. So first and foremost, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we live and work. For me, I live on Menang Noongar Budja down here in Kinjalling or Albany, and these beautiful water bodies here are Wilson Inlet and Oyster Harbour, 2 of the culturally significant areas that I'm fortunate to live nearby. I'd also like to acknowledge our funders. Healthy Estuaries WA is a state government program, and Soils New Horizons is a bilateral partnership between the Australian government and DPIRD with a funding contribution from Healthy Estuaries WA. So a little bit about us. Dr Deborah Holtham is the Sustainable Agriculture Coordinator at DWER and has worked on the Fertiliser Management Program and associated programs under Healthy Estuaries WA for 7 years. I'm Holly Butterworth. I'm a Development Officer at DPIRD working on the Soils New Horizons program. I just started at DPIRD last year and my background is in freshwater ecology. And of course, there are so many wonderful people involved in making these projects happen, including from DWER, DPIRD, industry, and the 13 catchment groups that we partner with. Some of these groups have been involved with Healthy Estuaries WA for 10 years now, and they really make these projects possible. So I'll start with a little bit of background as to why we run these projects. Nutrient loss has potential risks. From an environmental perspective, nutrient runoff can result in high nutrient load in water bodies, potentially leading to nuisance algal blooms. This can deplete oxygen levels in water and may result in fish deaths and ecosystem degradation. From a financial perspective, fertiliser is expensive, and nutrient losses and unnecessary inputs can result in a low return on investment. For grazers, fertiliser application is the largest input cost to their farming systems. Southwest beef, sheep, and dairy farmers apply $400 million a year in excess phosphorus. So these projects really have a double bottom line of improved environmental and economic outcomes. Something that we talk about a lot in these programs are the 4 R's of nutrient stewardship, which have been developed to support production while minimizing environmental and financial risk. So these are using the right source of nutrients or the product with only the specific nutrients required, keeping nutrients in the right place where pasture can use it, applying nutrients at the right time matched with pasture requirements, and applying the right rate of nutrients so you're not over or under supplying pasture. So these programs are based on soil testing, and soil testing provides the essential information required to make evidence-based fertiliser management decisions. And this allows growers to improve or maintain production while reducing nutrient loss to the environment, reduce input costs by applying only the amount of nutrient required, optimize nutrient use efficiency, and match fertiliser application with pasture requirements. So part of the Fertiliser Management Program uses a process called whole farm nutrient mapping, which has been developed since 2009 in several programs, including the Regional Estuaries Initiative, or REI, Healthy Estuaries WA, Soilwise, and Soils New Horizons. So this process provides paddock-specific information to guide evidence-based fertiliser decisions on farm. So how does this process work? We start by collecting a representative soil sample for each paddock and then test these samples for an agronomic suite of analytes, including phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, pH, and the phosphorus buffering index. These results are then compared against national critical values, which I will explain further in a moment. We then use these results to create color-coded paddock maps of soil fertility. We then use these reports, along with tools like the nutrient line calculator and agronomic advice, to apply the 4Rs and grow pasture sustainably and economically. So I mentioned the term critical value, but what does that actually mean? A critical value is the level of fertility required to achieve a particular target production on a particular soil type. So if you go out and test a paddock and your phosphorus result comes back lower than the critical value, it means that your pasture does not have enough phosphorus, for example, to reach your target production. If your soil test result comes back higher than the critical value, you have more phosphorus than you need, and you're at a higher risk of losing it through leaching or erosion. So national critical values for high rainfall pastures were developed for phosphorus, potassium, and sulfur in the Better Fertiliser Decisions for Pastures project, which was based on over 3,000 trial sites across Australian pasture regions. However, we have unique soils in southwestern WA, so there was some hesitancy to adopt these critical values. In response, DWER and DPIRD developed the uptake trials, aimed to build confidence of industry and farmers in the science supporting these phosphorus fertiliser recommendations here in southwestern WA. So this was 52 phosphorus fertiliser trials that looked just like this one, conducted on grazing properties in 6 regional estuary catchments between 2019 and 2023. And the results confirmed that the national critical values for phosphorus are relevant to southwest WA. So what have we achieved so far? Since 2009, 2,300 farms have been sampled, analysed and mapped, covering 400,000 hectares. We've reduced unnecessary phosphorus inputs by 200 tonnes per year. There has been a 30% reduction in paddocks with excess phosphorus between 2014 and 2025. We've seen improved evidence-based fertiliser decisions, saving farmers over $8,700 on average per farm per year on phosphorus fertiliser alone. And we've improved water quality in rivers and estuaries. So some eligibility criteria for the Fertiliser Management Program are properties must be located in the high rainfall zone, which we consider to be over 550 millimetres of average annual rainfall. If the property is located in one of the priority estuary catchments, which are dark blue on this map, they are in the Healthy Estuaries WA program. If the property is in the light blue area, they are in the Soils New Horizons program. And participants must run beef, dairy, sheep or mixed farming enterprises with over 40 hectares of cleared arable land used for grazing or for hay production. So what do program participants receive? They get the soil sampling equipment that they get to keep and training in taking a representative soil sample. They get soil sample analysis for macronutrients, pH, PBI and other analytes. They receive a mapping report of soil fertility and an interactive workshops to learn how to interpret those soil test results and understand key nutrient management issues. They receive one-on-one advice with a DPIRD specialist or agronomist to help make those evidence-based decisions. And if they are in the Healthy Estuaries WA program, they'll receive tissue testing in spring as well. So if this were to be done commercially, the value is over $4,500 for a 15 paddock farm. As part of the program, first-time participants get all of this for $300. If they have been in a similar program before, it's $25 per paddock. Healthy Estuaries WA also has the option for DPIRD to sample farms, which costs them $50 per paddock. So all things considered, this really is a no-brainer for growers, especially when you consider the thousands that participants can save in fertiliser costs as well. So how do we create the mapping reports? First, we receive a sampling map that is provided by the participant. That's the map on the left here. We then run these through a GIS program to digitise them, and we give every paddock a unique sample code. These maps are then provided to participants before they collect their samples, and they go and collect their samples. They log where they're sampling on a GPS app, and then we can map the transects that they have sampled on their map, which is the transect map on the right here. And that means that in future years, when growers test their soil test again, they can do the same transects, which allows results to be compared over time. The paddock codes that we give individual paddocks, they match the bags, the sampling bags that we give to participants, so we know exactly where each sample came from. And this allows us to display individual paddock soil test results in map format for 11 different factors, including macronutrient status and fertility indices. So the example map at the top here shows pH. You can see it's color-coded, so dark green is a pH of 5.5, which is our target. The one below is phosphorus status at 90% of maximum production. So red paddocks are deficient, orange are optimal, and green have excess phosphorus. We also display this data in a table, which is color-coded to match the maps and includes relative yield targets from 80 to 95%. So what does participating in the program look like for participants? Expressions of interest are open now until the 22nd of July, and then we need the sampling maps by early August. Between September and November, participants will complete a pre-survey of questions about their enterprise and fertiliser history. In October and November, we run DIY sampling field days, where participants will receive their equipment and learn to soil sample. Soil sampling will run from November to January, depending on when the last rains are. And the Fertiliser Management Workshop is in February or March. And this is where participants will learn to turn their soil test results into actionable fertiliser management plans. And then they will continue to use ongoing evidence-based fertiliser decisions. The following season, participants also complete a post-survey, which helps us assess the impact of the program. So I also just want to talk a little bit about the DPIRD nutrient calculator. So this is a free tool available on the DPIRD website to help growers figure out the right source and rate of fertiliser. Anyone can use it, it's totally free. All they need is some soil test results. So I've entered some soil test results as an example here, and they've been automatically color-coded. So red is deficient, orange is just below the agronomic target, and green is at or above the agronomic target. So if we focus on the first row here, phosphorus is my primary limiting nutrient in the red, and sulfur is my secondary limiting nutrient in the orange. If we click this down arrow to open up the next line, we can select a fertiliser and a yield target, and the rate of fertiliser required will be calculated. So I've selected superphosphate to address my phosphorus and sulfur constraints, but there are several fertilisers to choose from, and you can enter your own as well. So this is telling me that to reach a 90% relative yield target, I need to apply 198 kilograms per hectare of superphosphate to address my limiting factor, phosphorus and sulfur. However, if I drop my yield target by just 5%, I now only need 99 kilograms per hectare of superphosphate, and sulfur is no longer a limiting nutrient. So this is a really great tool for targeted fertiliser decision making. You can easily visualise how much paddocks need and adjust yield targets to reflect production goals. So I've linked it here, but you can also just Google DPIRD nutrient calculator and it'll be the first thing that comes up. So that's how we look at the right source and the right rate. Now I want to focus on right place. So producers can do all of the right things. They can soil test and make evidence-based decisions, but if their machinery is not accurately spreading fertiliser, they are unlikely to see the pastoral response that they should. So as part of the program, participants are invited to AccuSpread field days run by Russell Nichol, Australia's leading AccuSpread specialist. So participants bring their own spreader along to the field day and we test them to see how evenly they are spreading. So we'll load up the spreaders with fertiliser and we'll run them over these trays that we've laid out that you'll see in a moment, the black trays on the ground here. Then we collect the granules that are in each tray, we weigh them and we plot their distribution in a computer program. Then Russell will tinker with the mechanisms and we test them again and again until we get a nice even fertiliser distribution. And it's amazing how different spread patterns can be on the same make and the same model. So both Healthy Estuaries WA and Soils New Horizons have trials as part of the program. For Soils New Horizons, demonstration trials have been established this year on collaborators' properties in Gingin and Kentdale near Denmark, building on last year's trials at DPIRD's Horticultural Research Institute in Manjimup. Through these trials, we are investigating potassium and sulfur constraints to pasture so that we can give better recommendations to growers. We're also looking at soil testing versus tissue testing versus sap testing as mechanisms to provide evidence for nutrient status. We will be running field walks of these trial sites in September or October, so keep an eye out for that. Soils New Horizons is also investigating subsoil constraints that can restrict root growth and reduce nutrient uptake, such as aluminium toxicity and subsoil acidity. To do this, the project team are collecting 30 centimetre soil cores, which is deeper than the standard 10 centimetre agronomic soil cores we use for soil testing. We're looking at 500 paddocks across the high rainfall zone. And this will give us a better understanding of the extent and severity of subsoil constraints in the region and how pasture production may be limited. So this map shows the work achieved since 2016 under Healthy Estuaries WA and the Regional Estuaries Initiative. You can see that Healthy Estuaries WA is much broader than just the Fertiliser Management Program, which is coloured in the yellow. So under the Sustainable Agriculture branch, we have dairy effluent upgrades and fertiliser trials across all catchments. But there's also revegetation and fencing, soil amendment trials, and monitoring sites in estuaries and rivers. So what next? If you are a land care officer, you can spread the word to growers in your catchments. These programs have environmental, economical, and production benefits, and the more people that know about it, the better the outcome will be. You can learn more about nutrient management by attending our events, including trial site field walks and workshops. And you can keep up to date via our Facebook accounts, where we post about upcoming events and what we've been up to. If you are a grower, you can register for the program by scanning the QR code here, or you can find out more by getting in touch with us or checking out our Facebook pages and websites. I'd like to thank our partners and supporters for Healthy Estuaries WA and also for Soils New Horizons. And thank you for your time this morning. And I think we've got plenty of time for questions now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Holly.
Thank you.
We've got a couple of questions in the chat that we can kick off with. Teresa asked if there's testing available for micronutrients in the program or adding on more tests. I guess whether that's the option to add on more tests if that's available.
Yeah, so we don't look at micronutrients, but growers can add on whatever tests that they'd like. It's just not included as part of the program. But when we send the soil samples to the lab, they can absolutely include their own paperwork to test their samples for any other analytes that they're interested in.
Awesome. Yeah. And Ness asks, how long can participants be involved with the program?
As much as they like, really. So Soils New Horizons will run this year and next year. Healthy Estuaries will be ongoing, I believe. And we recommend soil sampling every 3 years, or some people prefer to do a third of the farm each year, for example. Yeah, that's what we recommend. But I think Deb had something to add to the previous question.
Sure. Thank you, Holly. Yeah, just following on from the story of micronutrients, the reason that we don't include them as part of this program is because they're in very small quantities in the soil, and the tests in the lab are not good enough to pick up those levels. So what we do recommend is plant tissue testing, which is a better indication of what the micronutrient status is in the actual plant.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
more efficient. Cool. Any other questions? Teresa, do you have any other questions to ask Holly? No, we're all good. Cool. Well, best way to contact you, Holly, is just through email, do you think? And Deb?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So the nutrient mapping at dpird.wa.gov.au is the best email address for us, and that will come to us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you both so much. If there's no more questions from anyone, we'll wrap up for today and have a fantastic week. Thank you so much,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome. Got my little brain thinking. So when I do